aspect of that. So there's reporting, and there's some survey that could be done, and it functions in a better two-way flow of information.
Is it, I don't know, would it depend on how much participation? Is it, statistically significant information, or are we even anticipating that we?
No, this is really just, it's not, this is really more just a way to get kind of quick touch points, really be more interactive to help you then probably shape and form the questions that you may use in an ETC survey. You're going to get the results that are statistically valid. So this is a way to just kind of keep the ideas percolating, to give people different platforms where they can come out and kind of give you more instant feedback than waiting, taking a survey, doing some things like that. And it may not be a tool that, again, I think as Martin touched on, it's something we can either build on or expand and contract as we have projects where we see it adds value.
See its use after a year, and if it's not.
Yeah. And again, what we try to accomplish with the approach that we are proposing is to do the public meetings, where we'll have some people attend, but most people don't, to be honest. Then we'll do the statistically valid survey as well, and that will, the intent of that is to give you a true glimpse of what the feel is of the community at large. And then this third approach or strategy is to try to tap into a market that perhaps wouldn't participate in the public meetings. One of the concerns that we hear often is you didn't ask the right questions as part of a process like this, or you didn't ask the right people. So what we are proposing is ask questions a number of different ways, so a number of different people, different demographic groups, so we can have as broad of an opinion base as possible, which later on is going to help the comprehensive plan be supported by the Plan Commission and the Council.
Did you have a question?
I did, just a comment. As we move forward on the comprehensive view of what we're doing in the city, I think we need to take advantage of all the different groups that have formed that have input on a specific level. For instance, we have Sustainability Commission, and they have a venue in this area. We have this task force that Stephen and I are going to be working on with Johnson Drive. That's another. Those are all small components of a comprehensive master plan. But all the reports and findings, to me, need to be focused through that group that this is approved, and they know what's going on that level too.
So can't the website be linked to our website? Can't this URL just be linked in as like a link off of our mission website?
Yes.
So
And
it's
there
not
will be
a
interconnections, and there'll be,
So it's not like I have to go to a wholly separate URL, I get there from this website? Yep. And then why does I know we're only approving 1 year, but why does it get so much significantly more expensive? It's almost 3 times more expensive in year 5.
That's a good question. I don't have the answer to that.
I mean, like what do they provide different year over year?
I think that the
Oh,
cost,
it's
the average yearly fee does go down, so that would make sense. The price escalates, but per year it goes down. So the longer the agreement, the less the cost per year.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Take it to council?
Thank you.
I don't think we should have it on consent. I think we should talk about it, so the public knows and understands what we're doing, what we're trying to do.
Sure.
Since we're ultimately looking for their input. Heads up, folks.
Okay. Martin, did you say, are we going straight to 3?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. It does not mean to skip Christy.
No problem, sir. Christy?
I would never skip Christy.
Christy's going to talk to us about the Parks and Rec Master Plan Consultant.
I'm hoping you asked Martin all the tough questions. So, anyway, I think the Parks and Recreation Master Plan is something we've been talking about for several years. And as a matter of fact, when we talked about financing the construction of a new pool, then Pat had a great idea that we needed to address our other facilities as well as just the swimming pool. So we increased that from to create some sales tax. So we were able to go ahead and submit a request for proposals for Parks and Recreation Master Plan back in September. We received 4 proposals back, and we did interview all 4 of those firms that submitted those proposals. Committee made up of Councilman Quinn, Laura Smith, myself, and Jeremiah Salazar. And Mark Radaziner from the Park Commission. So, sorry about that, Mark. Spent an afternoon interviewing that. We did, presentation followed by question and answer and everything. And then did a lengthy discussion amongst the team afterwards, and it was kind of a resounding confluence, being the firm to do the master plan for us. In the master plan, of course, they'll do a needs assessment, take a look at everything that we currently have, what we're offering, make recommendations as to changes we can make, additions, improvements, those types of things, and then also talk about the financial implementation, or the implementation for that, on how we achieve all those. Confluence made up of a team themselves, as well as Ballard King, which is very familiar with our community center, as they did the feasibility study for that when it was built. They also have worked for us in some other capacities through the aquatic center study and different things there, so very familiar with the community center and our operations. So, and then ETC was also a component or on their team, and we were able to pull the ETC survey component out of the proposal, the original proposal, and with that work that Laura's going to be talking about on the next agenda item, really will be 3. So then we were able to reduce the price of what the surveying for Parks and Recreation would be. So anyway, we had $70,000 originally budgeted for that master plan, and they are proposing to do this for $54,600 with reimbursables right at $2,500, not to exceed the $2,500, and then so that will be their contract. And of course, on top of that, we will have to pay out of this fund for the survey part of it, which will be $6,000.
Very good.
Yeah, I think this is great, and I'm just super excited to see what we could do to improve our parks, because I think that is a very easy, probably one of the most inexpensive ways for us to improve the, life of, work and play of people who live in our community, and that creating our parks and creating an environment where families want to come and play with their kids and hang out after dinner or something, or bring a picnic, is, I think, a big commitment from a community to their residents and other surrounding areas. So I'm super excited about this.
Very good.
Let's take into account trails,
Trails, yes.
including whether or not we should or should not
Yes.
connect.
Yes.
I'm super excited.
Yeah, I think what I didn't mention is we'll include a total of 3 public meetings, then some special interest group meetings, staff meetings, the survey. So we'll again try to get a lot of feedback, and hopefully we will have more participation at our public meetings than Martin is anticipating in his.
No slamming against Mark.
No, not.
Oh, this sounds like a competition. Mm,
We have
okay.
said in years that nobody attends those
Free cookies,
meetings.
they'll come.
So you see that? That's what I'm gonna do.
Any other questions for Christy?
Okay, we're on.
Appreciate the work of the committee.
Great job. Yeah.
Chris Klein's on it again.
Yes.
Recommendations?
Okay, council.
Very good. Consent?
I don't care.
I'm good with that.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Do you guys think we should talk about this one too? Again,
Do you
to
want
get
to?
the people excited about it? I think that this is a verbal depiction of what we're doing with the sales tax, and I don't think it's a bad idea.
I don't either, and it won't take long, it's just,
No.
it's just an added benefit to the community, I think we
Sure.
gotta bring it up.
I got no problem with that.
Again, since we'll have public meetings and all of that.
All they'll hear is a yay or a nay vote otherwise, so
Okay.
they won't really know.
I think connecting these first 3 together, so I'll jump in. So the ETC survey, we talked about doing the update to the Direction Finder survey. So we've done Direction Finder in 2007, 2011. We were budgeted to do that update in 2015. As we started talking about the Parks Master Plan, the comp plan update, And we really thought there may be an opportunity to stretch the dollars that we have even further and, and have an opportunity to survey, but then test some of those assumptions with a second survey done by the same firm. So we pulled ETC out of the Parks Master Plan process. They were a sub-consultant with that, and are looking to do, and they're really interested in tying both the Parks Master Planning, Comprehensive Planning, and the Direction Finder Survey together in better ways so that we're connecting the public and making the public more aware of how these things are all interrelated and how their decisions play out in all these different areas. So we're able to really accomplish all of those things. So in 2015, we would actually have 2 statistically valid surveys administered by ETC. So we would do one early in the year. That gives us the ability to have some of that information, test some assumptions, get some input through the public meetings, retest that through a second survey, and then be at the end of the year with some, I think, some really good data for decision making.
And are they going to take into account some of the financial concerns with some of these questions? Because it's so easy to say your concerns. I mean, we don't like everything, but then when you look at the finances and how you get it actually done, it's a whole different story.
So Direction Finder is a pretty standardized set of questions. Because again, you're measuring satisfaction with basic city services, and it allows us to benchmark ourselves also against other cities in the metropolitan area. Where we'll have the opportunity for greater input are those questions specific to the Parks and Recreation Master Plan and the Comprehensive Plan issues as we kind of start to formulate, how do we pull some of those things out. So absolutely, you all have to be comfortable with the questions that are asked in order to be comfortable with the answers.
Who else has used ETC in the past?
Most of the other cities in the metropolitan area have used ETC. So we can benchmark against both sides of the state line, really.
Very good. Any questions for the board? No? Any recommendations?
But I think we ought to talk about this in the future, we're gonna go to
Oh, let's talk.
Let's talk.
He likes to.
Okay. Martin, that brings us to number 4, on-call engineering services.
Thank you. Martin and John. John and Martin.
John and Martin.
Okay, well, as you know, the city has a policy that every number of years, on a recurring basis, we go out and do a competitive selection, qualifications base of firms that do services, that provide services to the city. We do have currently contracts that are expiring for our on-call engineering services. So we have, we had a conversation with the council committee a few months ago about this release of requests for qualifications, which we did. We received 10 responses to our request for qualifications for on-call engineering services. Of those 10, we shortlisted 5 and conducted some interviews. The interview panel consisted of Pat Quinn and Debbie Kring, Robin Dukla from the Planning Commission, and then Laura Smith, myself, John Belger, Danielle Murray, and Glenn Cole. So we have a pretty good panel. Went through those initial questions. Following that first round, we did narrow it down. There was a consensus was pretty clear on 3 firms, and we did have a staff panel do a follow-up interview with 3 of those firms, Finnis, GBA, and Olson, and ask them more, I would say, technical questions. And following that, the staff panel does recommend to you to select 2 of those firms for our next 3 years with an option to extend to a 4th year on-call engineering services. And those are George Butler Associates and Olson Associates, both of which performs services for the city at this point. So what we recommend to you now is 2 agreements, and they're identical, master services agreements with an exhibit that is a task order that has to be approved individually in the future when projects arise. But this sets up the form of the agreement for any project. For example, if in 3 years we are in the process of pursuing design for the Fox Ridge Drive improvement project, then one of these 2 firms would bring forward a task order for that scope of work for design of that project. We do have the recommendation of those two firms. I'm sure you will have questions, so I'll just take any questions you have at this point.
Could you just briefly explain why we're looking at two firms and not one firm?
We currently, right now, we work with 3 firms on a number of different services. What we have found for the transportation side, it has been very beneficial to us. First of all, if we have, part of the scope is assisting the city in reviewing development proposals that come before the city, like the Gateway Project, for example, or Cornerstone Commons, or Mission Crossing, to submit a plan, and we have to review that and say, yes, it's good, it's designed according to city code, or it's not. And there have been in the past conflicts where we use one firm, and all of a sudden that firm is working for the developer, so now we can't use them, so we got to use someone else. It's good for that. It's also helpful for design and inspection of projects that we do ourselves. And this allows the city to use one firm for design of a project and another firm for inspection of that project itself. So that's the approach that we have had, and we found that it's worked very well. I don't know, John, if you have anything else to add.
So who do we currently have contracts with?
George Butler Associates and Olson. We've also done, obviously, a lot of stormwater work with Black and Beach in the past.
So, did we not have concerns with our existing consultants in regards to certain aspects of Johnson Drive? No.
I think we've talked about those challenges, and I think as we actually went through the interview process, one of the other firms had a similar challenge with the city of Prairie Village. I mean, I think we've been kind of in that cycle where as the market is adjusting, some of these firms are going through that process. I don't think that overall, I think as we've worked through those and kind of really identified where we had our issues, and I think we've identified how to avoid having those issues going forward. I think these are both still very reputable firms, and I think would serve us well.
And then
in that instance.
I talked to some folks at KDOT when I was out there for a pre-construction meeting, and they had a bid letting in the fall, and they said about 25 to 30% of the bids were thrown out just because of that. A lot of it has to do with market trends. I mean, it happens in the construction industry a lot. It hinges on material pricing. It hinges on, for instance, I got a letter the other day that said ready-mix concrete's going up $6 a yard next year. So, you got that. I mean, it's constantly.
Well, and we asked the question in the interview. I think we asked the question of every single firm that we interviewed. Give us an example of a miss, right? And every single firm had an example of a miss.
And then did we ask them how they avoid those misses in the
Yes.
future?
Yes. And so you all maybe can address that process better.
Because my point is, we were pretty upset. I mean, generally, everybody on this council was pretty upset about that. So it's just interesting to me that we're choosing.
The same one.
Right.
Well, it's all across the board. It's not just them. And,
And what did they say they would do to avoid that in the future? What was their answer to that?
I don't specifically. What'd you say?
Stop being human.
I mean, it happens.
It's gonna.
And the biggest thing to take away from that is when it does happen, it's more about how you respond to it. And, Olson knows, for instance, with the Johnson Drive thing, they missed. They were right there to help out, coming up with a solution. And you have to keep plugging away. Prairie Village is another example of that. You go back, you figure out where you're wrong, and you make it right.
Why did you pick those two over everybody else? I mean, what really recommended them to you?
They were all excellent.
Were they?
Yeah, they were really good. It was really hard. They were good.
Yeah, we gave, the whole panel gave our recommendations, like we rated them, ranked them. And then, you guys had another smaller panel that kind of did the final picks, but I'm totally happy with who they chose. The two I think I recommended too.
And the follow-up interview was a lot about that, about missing the engineer's estimates. And there is a contraction in the market, a correction in the market. There are fewer contractors doing work now than 3-4 years ago. And all of a sudden, there's more work, so it's becoming pretty common. Now, that's probably not gonna last for a while. Engineering firms also have to be careful. They can't be too conservative with their estimates. If they are too conservative with the estimates and start missing the other way, then the scopes of the projects are gonna be reduced significantly. So it's not an easy, there's not an easy answer to it. They just have to be on top of the market and learn from the mistakes. So we feel comfortable, and we did follow up on that extensively. We asked a lot of follow-up questions. John asked questions to KDOT, and it's something that's been happening in 2014. And it's not something that Olson is any better or worse than other firms or GVA for that matter. And we did ask the other firms. So we
There's a
feel
true
comfortable.
benefit derived by using firms that have already been here too. They know every utility location, they know everything about this community. I mean, they've been involved throughout the process for the last 10 years. And I think, some of that has its benefit relative to cost measuring too. They don't have to go back and check X, Y, Z to the level that someone new coming in. And I would never deter someone new coming because that's important too. But I think they do have a lot of the data set up within this city already, that's a cost benefit, I think.
Well, in the past with their cost estimates on Markway, Knoll, Road, when we go through those, I mean, they've been pretty good on those.
You like the way they handled it?
Any other questions? Recommendations?
I'd say take
Many thanks to the committee. You guys
Thank
spent a
you.
lot of time doing
Thank
that.
you.
That's
Consent, or would
arduous
you
work.
guys like to discuss? Consent? Okay, thank you. John, I guess you want to talk about the bids for the replacement?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Here in the past month or so, Public Works requested some bids from some roofing contractors to get the roof on City Hall replaced. We got 4 responsive bids, with Century Roofing being the lowest. Our initial budget for the roof replacement was $75,000, and with Century's coming in at around $48,000, we decided to go out, ask them for a bid option for replacing the gutters at the same time. And that price came in very good as well. So what we have proposed to do is to replace the roof and guttering at City Hall in the amount of $56,960. We had originally planned to do the roof next year, but what we've done is, in lieu of purchasing the new financial management software, we've decided to go ahead with the roof replacement and push the financial software next year.
It's that bad, huh?
Well, and
It's-
this is really at my request. I mean, we just time and the staffing issues that we've had, we haven't had the time to do an RFP and evaluate and get the new financial management software in. So it was budgeted in 14. We budgeted the roof replacement in 15. Both, I think, kind of high priorities, and the financial management software is absolutely still at the top of the priority list. But rather than let those funds roll into fund balance and have a conversation again about sort of reappropriating, we'd like to just keep both the projects moving. And I think by being able to go out and get the bids on this one, we can take advantage of that. And found we had some savings, so I think that's
Have you
good.
looked
like
at any
that.
properties that Century is going to work on?
I know Danielle said that they've done a lot of residential roofs in town. They're a reputable company. They've been around for a long, long time.
Are we gonna place little leaf things on the gutter, leaf guards?
No, we've had them just replace it with regular 5-inch residential gutters, but Public Works cleans out the gutters quite often.
We could look at that. I mean, with this price,
Sure.
did you want us to look at an alternate for leaf guards?
I mean, how much more would it cost?
I don't know.
Can
Let's
we just
look- we can look at
You
it.
guys
We
can
can
do
talk
other
to
fun stuff. Like, on the gutter. I'm like, then I wouldn't be so worried about you getting up on the roof.
That's not too bad. I prefer terra firma though.
You're getting hurt up there.
Cards are good.
No.
Any other thoughts, questions?
No, are you gonna, are we gonna take this before you get the information on the leaf guards? I mean, we can't,
We can get that and adjust we can include that in the packet probably by Friday, I would think.
Tina?
And what do you think the leaf gutters are gonna cost?
I don't know.
You know, a lot of times it depends on the roof and
Yeah,
it
we got the
depends on the
budget,
gutters
their
too.
wherewithal,
So, I
right?
mean, we can always ask the question.
Okay. with that
That's your
said,
bet?
Yeah.
Sounds good. Any recommendations then?
I'm gonna go for
Yeah. I'd say we, take it and look for the, file up here, Laura.
I agree.
Agreed.
I think we can put on consent.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're here.
Unless the gutter guards are 20,000 or something.
Right, then we'll just.
Then we'll have
then
public
we'll just do it
works
as it is.
Thank
All about the job.
That's right. And
Okay.
has offered to go up on the roof himself.
I'm not afraid of that.
I clean mine on the roof.
Number 6 is our interlocal agreement with Mission Roeland Park site development. Myself and Amy and Laura and Martin were at this initial meeting. I think, Martin, you attended the Roeland Park City Council meeting, is that correct?
I did, that's correct.
You want to discuss this
Sure.
with everyone else?
This one is my favorite. We talked about this also a couple of different meetings. There is a vacant tract of land at the northeast corner of Johnson Drive and Roe. That's split between the two cities, Roeland Park and Mission. So we talked about a process that we can pursue in order to determine what it is that the two cities jointly want to see develop here ultimately, and take the necessary steps to at some point in the future, be able to sell this land and have it developed as Project X down the road. First step has been one meeting with this panel that Steve and Lucas mentioned, and we have this panel has come up with an interlocal agreement so that two cities agree to a couple of things. First of all, the city of Mission is staff is designated as a project administrator, and the reason for that is because we have done a couple of processes like this already. The Mission Square project being one, the net printing project being another one, where we've taken plots of land and I've done requests for proposals and gone through the necessary steps. We also have a little bit more staff than they do in Roeland Park, so maybe we have some tools and at our availability to go through this process. So first step, the first point of this interlocal is we are the administrators of the project. Second one is there is a compensation that's been negotiated between the staffs of the two cities for the work that Mission would do. The majority of this tract is within the city of Roeland Park, but a little bit also is, of course, within the city of Mission. But given that most of the land is in Roeland Park, we've come up with a fee that Roeland Park would pay Mission in order for our time. And there's a little formula that's included in your packet, but essentially what it becomes is $7,800 over an 8-month period that Roeland Park would pay Mission for those services. What you have before you, this did go to the Roeland Park City Council Committee of the Whole on Monday night, and there is one change that they asked that the committee recommended to Roeland Park City Council, and I do have the revised interlocal here before you, and it's a very simple change that they recommend. There is a committee that would be set up, a steering committee to move this process forward. And initially what had been recommended was that this committee be made up of not more than 2 council members and 1 planning commissioner from each city. Roeland Park was interested in having that be not more than 2 council members and 2 planning commissioners from each city. That was the recommendation of the committee of the whole. I was asked what my opinion was on that, and I said, I thought it's probably not a major deal, but I was going to bring it up to, obviously, the attention of this committee. So with that, once this agreement is approved by the 2 city councils, assuming that's the case, then we would be in a place that we could start working in January and go through the first step, which is deciding what it is, deciding jointly what it is that should be the development vision for the site. What should we pursue before we take the additional steps to get it master planned or comprehensively planned, zoned, and sold eventually. So I'll stop and I will take any questions.
Does this come out of your department? Will you be the staff?
It'll be a combination of Danielle and I, and I'm sure Laura Smith will be participating in that as well.
Did you guys volunteer?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. This is an exciting, it is an opportunity to take a piece of land that if somebody doesn't sit down and actually go through all the necessary, it's not gonna sell. It's
Right.
gonna sit just like it is. It's ground that can be developed, but it's in two cities. There's utility issues, there's right of way that has to be vacated, there's a whole bunch of things that have to be done. What's that?
You love that.
I don't love it, but it can be done, and at some point, there could be a building of some type there. And if that's something that the council wants to see done, right.
Well, then you're gonna decide the tax base, who gets what.
Well, it's
Right.
kind of a 70-30 split. I mean, we have 70% of the property, they have 30%. It's just kind of how it works out, right?
Other way
They
around.
have,
They've got more
yeah,
than we
yeah.
do.
That's why they're paying it, yeah, sorry.
And are you gonna
So it makes sense.
do the
just
same
to-
thing like you've done with everything else, public input, a vision, or is this just gonna be the city council members? Who's doing the visioning?
It would be, we're envisioning a work session or a couple work sessions and involving the planning commissions and councils from both cities.
Okay, so it's not, I mean, before when you had this community
Yeah.
visioning.
I remember when you
Not
talked
for-
about,
Not for like,
Not for that little plot of land?
right,
when you talked about this before, you had mentioned Fairway with that little
Right.
3% thing. Have you guys,
They said,
Yeah.
when you figure it out, come back to us. We'll decide if we want to do anything. The only thing you might want from us is a place to put some signage.
and they did, I mean, they seem to be very on board with whatever we agree. And so
Well,
it's not
yeah.
like they're gonna be like, yeah, forget it, we're out, you can't do it. It seems like they're very open.
Not a problem.
Okay.
They said about the improvements to the creek too.
So that has a little bit more of an impact than
And that would-
Saying.
hopefully it's a different environment.
Oh, right, that 1.4 million too, right?
Yeah.
Sure it was. I'm sure it'll be great. I think this is an exciting project, I really do. Is there been any discussion about the intersection and the traffic lights and kind of, because my understanding right now, that's pretty important, should the gateway ever get going, that the city of Mission controls that intersection from a lighting standpoint, and relinquishing that control may impact. So it's just again, it's a long range, but it's just curious if that's,
Why would you think we would relinquish control? I'm just interested in.
well, we're going into a development agreement here that, puts us in partnership with, to develop a piece of land with a neighbor, which is a great idea. I'm just curious if it's come up.
I don't think it's come up on my end, it hasn't come up for us to
We
relinquish that.
talked about access to
Yeah.
that space and how we would create access, and it would probably definitely be off of the on-ramp onto Shawnee Mission Park, right, or
Johnson
Road.
Drive.
Johnson Drive, but,
Johnson Drive and Road are the two.
or it ends up being the on-ramp onto Shawnee
Correct.
Mission.
So we just want to make
Off
sure that
ramp,
we
off ramp.
capture that.
Yeah,
That's a good question.
keep that in mind.
I think it's exciting. Appreciate you guys volunteering to be a part of it, Steve.
So you're gonna find one other planning commissioner?
Is there, just curious, has there been anybody who's even approached you, a developer, about interested in that land?
There's people out there, yes, there are parties that would like to see something happen. Now, a developer is not gonna go in and say, I'm gonna buy all of that and do all of that. They're not going to. Part of it is right away now, and KDOT would have to vacate it.
And they vacated
There's
before.
parties out are waiting for
They're
this
waiting for
to
us
be
to-
cleaned up.
Do
But
the
they're
hard-
cleaned
Okay,
up
so
and
they've
more
expressed
correct.
interest where you know that
Yes.
Yeah.
there's some potential there, okay.
Yes.
I like it.
And you guys have density conversations.
Mhm.
I mean, the Roeland Park citizens that you're set with some missions.
It's true, just owns it.
That's gonna be fun. It's
gonna be awesome.
Okay.
So we probably should talk about this one too. with-
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Council, yeah. For the council.
Council?
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you, Martin. And, geez, you're just on a roll tonight. With discussion items, you want to talk to us about the sign ordinance review?
I'm actually gonna have Danielle do this one.
Okay, Danielle.
This will be a fun.
Congratulations.
Not as fun as the other one,
No, this is more fun.
just because you don't have to do it. So this is a discussion item
We've had, over the last several years, various complaints at various times about signage in the city, and staff thought it was probably good timing to revisit it. The circumstances are right, both with our staffing internally and with the Johnson Drive project being done. It's probably a good time to look at sign code enforcement. Knowing that we've had, some complaints about temporary signs, some complaints about other kinds of signs, we wanted to kind of go into this rather than just doing it piecemeal and reactionary, try to come up with a sign code enforcement program that was proactive, that was something that we could do for more than just one summer and then get overwhelmed with, that we could, know what we're doing before we start doing it, and maybe look at our sign code and make sure that the sign code's doing what we want it to. So this is really just an item to let you know a little bit about how we're strategizing, getting ready to start on that. We've kind of laid out the steps that we want to go through. The first couple steps are going out and just looking to see what's on the ground. You're familiar with the residential housing inventory that Roz did. This would be something similar, a lot less invasive though. It's commercial areas. It's not like we're going to be disrupting residential folk patrolling up and down streets. Most of what we need to see is going to be very easily visible from the street. Signs are intended to be seen, so they're easy to keep track of. But we want to match up what's on the ground now and what our records say, and then look at those two things and see where they may conflict with our sign code, so that if we did start going out and trying to do enforcement, that we would have an idea of what the scale of that endeavor would be and what assets and staff we need to apply to that. We always try to do code enforcement in a nice way to start with. A lot of times things are just misunderstandings. People don't know what the rules are. We like to educate first. We like to ask for voluntary compliance. Our sign code does allow us to go out there and write citations, but that doesn't usually solve the problem. We'd rather have folks work with us and then not have to do as much enforcement. So this lays out kind of those beginning steps where we analyze the problem a little bit, come back, touch point with you to let you know what we think maybe we can do with our current sign code, what we have to do with our current sign code, or maybe some changes to that, and then get ready to roll out and actually implement. So just a discussion item for you tonight. I don't know if there's too much.
So I personally was very interested in this after going to the LKM conference, and Martha and I sat in on a really great, and I need to send you guys the link. It's a 45-minute presentation, but the guy was just, first of all, he's very entertaining, he's very enthusiastic, and he shows you pictures of, what if you had this kind of sign in your city, which is just like a metal welcome to city, versus like kind of like a monument, what I'm going to call like a monument sign. It's like brick, or something that says like welcome to city, and it's just, you don't think about it, right? And then you see them side by side, and then the visual, it just a more, not just a standard metal sign that doesn't feel very welcoming. Right. It doesn't feel very like invested. It doesn't really set the tone for your city.
Temporary.
Yeah, and it just feels like it doesn't. It's not. We're not that excited about our city, right? Versus more like a monument type sign, that just says more about the pride you have in your city and kind of what you think about it. And so outside of just enforcement, I would like to see us think about signage from that perspective. Like, what kind of signs do we want to put in our city that represent the look and the feel of what we want Mission to be, and then that should be, to me, the foundation of then, therefore, what are the signage that other businesses and individuals in the city can use, and how that should kind of be the foundation of the purpose of our signage and what the look and the feel of the signage should be, including temporary signage, right? Like, I don't think I would necessarily be opposed to, in like the Mission Mart area, having a small kind of monument thing that says, here's all the different things we don't have that, right? At least not off of Johnson Drive, right? And they probably would love that, right? Just letting people know, here's what's in this area. I mean, you can even think about like, here's what's in this block, potentially on Johnson Drive, because I know a lot of business owners, for example, were concerned about people driving too fast down, Johnson Drive. So having that kind of maybe signage that we have the space with the larger sidewalks and stuff like that, maybe we have that kind of, I mean, there's just things to think about, but that's what I would like to see our sign code kind of look like outside of just enforcement, you know what I mean? So that's kind of when I was talking about this, what I was more passionate about, and then like I've talked to Laura several times about over there on the Lane 4 property, there's a lot of green space. Can we ask Lane 4 if they would be willing to put like a welcome to Mission sign there? Because right now it's just a little pink metal sign, right? And then when we look down over on the gateway, when things get developed over there, can we put some kind of similar kind of monument sign that says welcome to Mission? I don't want a big, huge, like whatever they were proposing
The
at
arch.
the art. I don't want anything like that, right? But, and then as we develop kind of down here off of, you know, Metcalf and Johnson Drive, you know, as we look at the different ways people come into our city, can we put up signage like that kind of really welcomes them, invites them into our community?
And this was talked about in the very beginning when we did the sign ordinance years ago, put welcoming signs like that at both entrances, so I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, that kind of flows with the idea of a gateway.
Yeah.
You know, and you're entering a new area, a new realm.
Well, yeah, and it doesn't even have to be a gateway. It's just, hey, we want you to come to our city, and we're really proud of our city, and this is the boundaries of it, and welcome in. You know, we want to welcome, like, we want to welcome people to your house. We want to welcome them to our city.
Sure.
What are the current sign ordinances on the berm on Mark Way? That's the one thing besides the house that I get the complaints about from people in our ward is they'll drive down Johnson Drive and it just looks so messy with all those little signs on the berm, and Miriam never does that, and they have those beautiful flower pots, and
That'd be one of those things that we give you more detail on later, but I think what you're noticing are the temporary signs. They are allowed, and probably half of what you see is probably okay, and the other half might not be, but the way our code is maybe written, it's harder for us to enforce it because it's like writing parking tickets for signs. So that may be one of those things that if we don't like the way that's working out, we will look at other ways to get what we want.
okay. Great, thank you.
Yeah, I don't by any means want to make it difficult. I mean, I want businesses to be able to promote their business, but I also want to make sure we're setting the tone for our community.
We have businesses right now that are out of compliance with their sign.
I
Sure.
Absolutely.
Especially like the whole.
Ask the
malls
question a
and
different
roads.
way.
Yeah.
We have ones that are in compliance.
Well, and then, you know, you also have churches too, and I guarantee you open this up and you're gonna start hearing folks from Trinity Lutheran and
Well, is it on our, is it public area like the berm, is that city or
signs.
Well, it doesn't matter. A city or a sign ordinance is a sign ordinance.
sign ordinance is a sign ordinance?
So I do think your idea of once you have the inventory and you overlay it with existing, there may very well be before you start enforcing it, 1 or 2, 3 or 4 adjustments that you may want to make business owners, churches, the city's life more in sync with one another.
Yeah, it's important to be strategic because obviously we're pro-business, even though we've got some signs that aren't up to code, so.
And even ask them for some input or something.
I think the last time we actually had a task force that looked at, you know, did all of this, and I'm not sure that we feel that's necessary at this point. Just, you know, let's figure out what we have and then what direction we want to head, and then we can decide. Again, some additional direction, so.
Good luck.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I remember that too.
Yeah, I do too.
That was a disaster.
I remember the very first test. That's way back.
Connie.
Yes, Connie did that. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Danielle, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Martin, do you want to do Turkey Creek?
I'll do the next one,
Okay.
yeah, real quickly. With the direction of the city council, we submitted for Planning Sustainable Places grant through the Mid-America Regional Council for initial design of the Turkey Creek Trail. And we requested $91,000 with a local city match of $39,000 combined for $130,000 project. And that went into a committee at MARC, and they looked at a number of different proposals throughout the region. And after it's all said and done, there are some projects that are now going before the MARC board next week for final action, and our Turkey Creek Trail initial design is one of those. However, as normally happens, as very often happens in the majority of cases, not 100% of our request was funded. Or recommended for funding. 77% of our request is being recommended for funding. So the numbers then would be, the city would receive about $69,000, $70,000. If we were to keep our initial match at the same amount, which was a question that I believe, Jennifer, you asked during the discussions that we had, if we would change that amount. If we keep that constant, that was the grant funding. Our project will be in the amount of $108,000 in change instead of $130,000, which we were targeting initially. What that means is that we may have to cut back on the scope a little bit, but hopefully try to include as many things as we initially set out to do, which is get some survey done, get some geotech work done, look at some options for where that trail would go. Would it go along the creek? Would it go higher up on Fox Ridge Drive, or different things like that? And try to get it.
Go up off of Johnson Drive and hook into other trails that we have to go back down, you know?
And we'll look at connectivity with other trails now. Something like that maybe becomes another trail altogether. That's not part of this scope.
Right.
But this scope would look at whether it's by the creek or along the street or something like that along the general corridor. That is important.
So
This
does
is
it
a-
have to stay along the general corridor? Because I would be open to making the trail in our city twice as long as it was originally proposed if it costs less money.
And this project may very well cost less money now. When it was initially estimated at a certain amount, a couple of things have changed. One has made the project potentially cheaper in the future. One has made the project potentially more expensive in the future. So the intent of this is to get to an actual number that we can use for budgeting purposes in the future to see if they can be plugged back into the CIP. So the other part of this is to see if hopefully we can get to some idea what the right-of-way impact would be of this trail in the future, so we can start developing estimates for what it would take to acquire that right-of-way and have some better numbers overall. Anyway, what would happen now is once the MARC board approves the list of projects we would get funding, there would be an agreement that would come back before the city council, and you would have to take action on that and approve that. And if the $39,000 from Mission stays constant, then that would be our project, and would get going on that, I assume, early in 2015. So there's no action at this point, just an update, and that's what's going on.
Can it be done for that money?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll say this is how much money we have, and we'll try to squeeze out as much scope into that amount.
Might just have to water the scope down a little bit.
Yeah.
Just kind of a preliminary finding to kind of see where we can put it and how much it really is gonna cost, because they just did a gross kind of number out there, we didn't have any specifics.
Exactly. For what it costs. Any questions?
Sounds good.
Okay, moving on to the last discussion item. We had a good discussion, I think, our last committee meeting regarding this. This is regards to downtown East Gateway zoning code text change. Martin, I think, is also prepared to discuss this.
And once again, there is no action required by this committee with this agenda item. This has been heard by the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission has held a public hearing, and they do forward an ordinance to the City Council with a recommendation of approval. So our process is that when that happens, that goes directly from the Planning Commission to the City Council. However, Laura and I talked about this, and we thought it was reasonable and prudent to bring it before you and give you a chance to ask any questions before it gets to the City Council, because there may be questions. It's somewhat of a complicated ordinance. As you know, it came before was discussed at the committee last month. We were asked to come up with some options, send it to the Planning Commission. We did. We gave the Planning Commission 3 options. One option was to defer any action until after the comprehensive plan discussions are finished. Another option was to really eliminate the restrictions that existed within the downtown and the East Gateway district. And the third option, the one in the middle, was to make some amendments and add some flexibility to certain portions of the area overall and lift a blanket prohibition. So we took that to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission had a really good discussion over an hour-long meeting. And they forward a recommendation to the City Council for amending the ordinance, tweaking the ordinance, and adding some flexibility to property owners that wish to provide this kind of service, automobile services, within certain area. So the blanket prohibition with this ordinance would be lifted, would be removed in certain areas. someone that's interested in pursuing that would still have to come back before the planning commission and the council with a request for a rezoning or a special use permit. So they still would have to come in the future with a request to do that. Actually file a formal application, hold a public hearing, which would be subject to a protest petition by neighbors or property owners within 200 feet and things like that. So the conventional zoning process. That still would happen. This just lifts the prohibition which now exists and covers the whole area. The ordinance, as is being recommended now, does a couple of things. It does three things. It says that automobile uses cannot be expanded or cannot be established within certain areas. Any parcel that is either wholly or partially within 100 feet of Johnson Drive. So that covers all of those parcels that front on Johnson Drive. And the reasoning for that is that this is the area that was initially intended and has been intended for a long time as a retail district, restaurants, entertainment, where pedestrian activity is encouraged. So that stays in the ordinance as is currently being proposed. Also, any area, any property within this area that is residentially zoned, and that would be any of the R districts or or the DND, the downtown neighborhood district, that would maintain that prohibition for expanded or new automobile services. And finally, any parcel that's within 100 feet of that. So with the map that I have in the package shows you what is the actual practical impact of that ordinance as being proposed. Currently, when it's all said and done, our current ordinance, anything that's within the blue and the red box.
The dark red?
Anything that has a color on it is where it's the prohibition
Yeah.
exists,
Yes.
right?
And anything that's anything that's within the big boxes, there is a current ordinance that says these uses cannot be expanded or they cannot be established. With the revised ordinance, anything that's dark red or lighter red or pink would maintain that restriction, and anything that's blue would have some flexibility. That restriction will be lifted. They would still have to come back with a request for a special use permit or rezoning, but that prohibition will be lifted. That is the ordinance recommendation of the Planning Commission to the City Council, and it'll be in your packets next week.
Was that unanimous?
That was unanimous.
I really appreciated how you gave us so much information on it, what the planning commission's minutes, and they pretty thoroughly discussed this.
They typically do. They do a good job.
Any questions for Martin?
Yeah, it was a very nice overview.
Okay. Thank you, Martin. I think that concludes our CDC meeting. Thanks, everybody. We do.
That's 7:32. So, I know, so no pressure.
Okay,
Gotta get going.
ready?
We gotta beat an hour.
Okay.
Got a lot more agenda items. We gotta beat an hour.
We are ready, gentlemen.
You got more agenda items today?
Oh, sure. They probably just got up later. You guys can sit here. I will.
Did you have them in the quiet room?
I did. They're in the green room.
Your green room, there you go.
I got this therapy, it's about 12 ounces.
Okay, so we'll start the Finance Administration Committee meeting, and we're gonna go ahead and move number 12, right, to the top?
Yes, please.
Okay.
It's the only item where we have
Gary,
guests.
we have guests. Gary and Pete are here with us.
Big guns.
Yeah, all right. So, gentlemen,
So
no
I'll
pressure, but we're
I'll-
trying to get done in less than an hour.
Oh, no sweat.
You have the easy part, then I have everything else on the agenda afterwards. So, during the 15 budget and beyond, we talked about this ability that we have to create this special benefit district around the Gateway project. And we talked about the timing associated as we went through the 2015 budget process. There was a lot of conversation around that, so I had just asked Gary and Pete to kind of look at that, kind of outline the remaining steps in the process, just so we're all clear as we move forward what that looks like and what the impacts of that might be.
So I guess a couple of things. One is, you may recall that as part of the development agreement, the developer agreed to cooperate, not protest, oppose, etc., the creation of a benefit district if and when the city decided to do it. So you have, financed the stormwater improvements on the project with, other types of bonds for this project. They were completed 3 or 4 years ago. So the question is, do you want to proceed now to go ahead and create the benefit district, or do you want to wait and give the developer more time? I think that's sort of what it really boils down to.
And the developer.
And the pros and cons?
I guess I propose of proceeding at this time is that, you know who you're dealing with right now. They're a party to the development agreement that provides they won't, protest or contest the assessments. If we move forward and the assessments are imposed, they're imposed, and you can terminate them at any time, but you can't sort of start and stop and then start again. So once you start, they're going to be in place unless you stop, and you stop for good. So that's sort of the negative, is that if you start it, a subsequent owner or subsequent developer is going to be subject to those assessments on the property, which of course is going to be additional cost for a developer to come in and try to make something else happen on that project when these assessments are in place. But I think the flip side is that you spent almost $12 million on stormwater improvements on that site to enhance the value of that site as well as upstream. And the deal always was that if there wasn't another source to repay the city for that $12 million of investment, the developer would pay for it over time with special assessments against their property.
If he sells that land, is there any contingency on us getting the?
Only with the benefit district in place.
Yeah, the benefit district is your protection. And as Gary said, the redevelopment agreement prohibits them from contesting our assessment of these stormwater assessments or creating them. And that agreement transcends the agreement itself, which means even if the agreement is canceled by this council, that agreement not to protest or contest it remains.
Is that a common clause in contracts now?
Mm-mm.
That's unique, is it not?
Pretty much.
Forward thinking, I would call it.
My inability to trust anyone.
We appreciate that.
And so, so we put it in place, Tom's doesn't own the property, there's another property owner, and then it likely just turns into a negotiation point with that developer as well. I mean, and he's going to whine about, this is going to prevent me from getting it done, and so there's probably other things on the other side that we can push over, discuss, negotiate, that even if we have this in place, doesn't make developing that property impossible for another owner.
I think so, although the question to you, Gary, is if we create the benefit district, we have the benefit district created, we assess $12 million. Is it possible for us, like we have in the development agreement now, having the developer pay 6 through TIF and pay the and we pay the balance? I mean, once we cast that $12 million, we really don't have much flexibility with it. It's either all in or all out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you start the final process, which is basically levying the assessments, and then at some future point you decide you're going to do something else that's beneficial to whoever the property owner is at that time, there's probably nobody that's going to object, because the only person that is paying is the property owner. So if you start out, we're going to assess the full 12, and 2 years from now, whether it's with the current owner or a subsequent owner, you say, okay, we'll agree to take X million from TIF or some other source, and we'll cut the assessment down to 6 million, you've got the authority to do that, but you can't sort of start and then, 3 years from now say, okay, we're gonna stop and see what happens, and then, oh, something doesn't happen, so you wanna start it again. You don't really have legal authority to sort of do that. You can levy it and then you can back down from, 12 million to 0, but you can't kind of start and stop.
So the levying of this is $600,000
Roughly,
a year.
roughly, yes.
Is that with the intent to recoup that 12 million, or is it independent of the 12 million?
No, the intent is to reimburse you for your $12 million investment on that property.
It's a 20-year term?
20-year term. So if you decide to proceed and you certify the assessments to the county prior to August 25th or whatever the day is, then the first half of that payment would be due December 20th or so of 2015. If you wanted to get past, August 25th and wait a little later in the year, then it would be the following year when the first payment would be due.
So just, okay, did I miss a memo on this to the council like we had talked about?
Did you what?
Laura, remember we had talked when we met with RCU and me, we were gonna get a memo out to the council. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss that.
You did not miss that.
Okay, so, I don't know how to ask this question. Does enforcing this now potentially accelerate an outcome?
Yeah.
An outcome with Tom?
This developer?
Yeah.
You mean accelerate his desire to get something built, or accelerate
Or,
some other course of action?
right,
Potentially, yeah.
so a potential risk to not enforcing this district now could be a continued holding matter. I guess my question is, I still don't know if I should ask it. Would, as Dave has called, I know you're just 2 of the 4 horsemen or whatever, would you advise the council to take action now or wait? Is that a fair question? Is
Sure.
that not a fair question?
I have an answer. I'm going to let Gary answer first.
And then
Smart
disagree
answer,
with
yes,
you.
but I'll go ahead. Go ahead, Gary.
Well,
I'm gonna say, I got the same question, just a different way. I wanna know how that 12 million, how best to recoup that 12 million for the city.
So I guess I would make a couple of comments. One is kind of starting this whole process was sort of our suggestion to Laura, and there's a variety of reasons why we think it's wise for the city to proceed at this time. Some of these probably you don't want to talk about in open session, but I think that from the city standpoint, your improvements are complete. You're paying debt service on bonds to finance these improvements.
We're looking at increasing fees to residents to
Right.
cover this and continuing to do so.
You've given this developer, it hasn't happened, and something could happen next week, or it may be another few more years before something happens. And I think in the interest of sort of protecting the city and the investment that you've made in this property on the assumption that it would be developed, I think it's wise to proceed with finalizing the assessments, and that may precipitate various actions by the property owner, but I'm not sure you really have any other wise course of action at this point, other than you got to do what's best for the city, not what if.
So your answer is yes?
Yes, that was a long yes. That's why I don't get paid for that.
He hasn't developed the skill yet.
Well, I'm sure you guys have heard me, but I've been pushing for this for at least 4 months now. So I'm all for it. I don't know if you guys are just looking for direction from us to proceed, with this or whatever, but my recommendation would be to tell them to proceed. I think it's the right course of action.
So Pete, do you want to expound on your, okay. So, since this is a discussion item, do we want to discuss other issues in a executive session? Do we want to move this to the council? I mean, what are people's thoughts?
I guess, if there's some agreement on the direction we gotta go, and I think you've got mapped out for us what the steps look like, what's that, just help us with the timeline in terms of the next action point or decision point. And, if it's not tonight, let us know.
Yeah, if you look at the memo that we prepared, it's really just when you want to start it at the next council meeting. So the process is you certify the final cost, which is the 11.9 million, or I can't remember the exact number.
We have that.
Yeah, we have the number. And then you basically call a public hearing, give notice to the property owner, along with a statement of the proposed assessments. And then you publish notice, mail notice to the property owner. And then you adopt an ordinance to basically approve the assessments. And then later in the year, that would be transmitted to the county clerk to go on the December tax bill.
So steps 2 through 6 could be accomplished if we were looking at a timeline. We would be, starting in January, we would essentially be done in March.
Yeah.
Could we start in December? Could we start with this council?
This next meeting,
Yeah.
do we have enough time to?
Yeah, well, the first step is
Next week.
basically, we can have the documents ready for your I mean, the documents are essentially ready. It's just a question of which dates to use.
Do we have a public hearing next week then?
No, you're
No.
just calling them.
Yeah,
Just
so
calling
that would
it out.
happen in January, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's just get it on the books and get everybody, to let.
I'm in favor of that.
What do you guys?
Move forward. Let's do
I
something.
just think
Thank you, we really appreciate your input on this.
thanks for your guidance.
Pete, I really appreciate your brief answers.
I give 25-cent answers.
It's paid by the word.
He can only speak for a second.
Good job, guys.
Right,
Thank
thank
you.
you
Thank
very
you.
much,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
That's easy.
Hopefully
All right.
we'll keep you on time.
Perfect, thank you so much.
Well, yeah, now you
Have a
nice
back.
day.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to everyone. Very good.
Okay, Laura, to 2015 classification of salary and schedule.
Yes, this is the process we go through every year where we benchmark our salary grades, our classification and compensation schedule against external benchmark data that's collected by the Mid-American Regional Council. And what we're really looking to do there as we benchmark against that data is make sure that we're competitive from a hiring standpoint. So are we keeping pace with the market? Can we attract and hire qualified folks? Our ranges were set through a classification and compensation study back in 2004. So we've got a 45% spread within the range, which gives a lot of opportunity for growth and salary growth within those ranges, which is important for us as well. So we go through that process. For many years, we were adjusting the ranges automatically by CPI and then doing the benchmark data. And so our ranges were growing very, very rapidly. We haven't adjusted the ranges since 2012. And we're not recommending that we adjust the ranges for 2015. So what I do is I apply CPI, which for all urban consumers through October of 2014 was 1.7%, and even with that adjustment in the ranges. And when we benchmark, we had some positions that were kind of outside, we felt like outside of the scope of the market. And as you see in the salary schedule, those were primarily the department directors' positions. So what we do then is we look at and we benchmark, I can't remember the percentage off the top of my head, but I think we benchmark about 80%, close to 80% of the positions. And then we look at those external benchmarks and we look at how our other positions in our classification schedule relate to those in terms of authority, level of responsibility, level of accountability, span of control in terms of supervision, and try to get those balanced out. So then we bring back to you those proposed changes for the year. Actually, we benchmarked 76% of the classification. So it's a good number that we have really, I think, good comparative data in the external marketplace. We're recommending, and we as the department head group sat down earlier this week, so I appreciate your willingness to let us delay this agenda item just a little bit. But we really talked about bringing those department director ranges down. It doesn't impact anybody's current salary, but what I think it does do is bring us more in line from an initial hiring standpoint with the market. I think that's important. So you see really all of those ranges being adjusted down. The other adjustment that we're recommending for 2015 is an adjustment in the police officer's range. And we actually, for the last year, have created a training rate. Oftentimes when we have a new hire, you have an individual who may need to go to the police academy. They're not ready the day we hire them to go out on the street and start performing as, the high level functioning police officer. So there's, once they get through the academy, if that's a need that they have, then they also have a field training program before they're really ready to kind of be out on their own. So we had established last year kind of a training rate that was very formalized. This really, I think, brings our police officers' position, the starting salary, in line with that philosophy, kind of formalizes that. As I talked with the chief, we don't have difficulty bringing people in at the starting salary. Where we have issues in our police department is our compression issues within that police officer range. So people who are being hired at that higher rate, and then as ranges are smaller, or merit increases are smaller, we get a lot of people sort of jammed up. And so you may have somebody with 5 or 7 years worth of experience making the same as somebody who was just hired 6 months or a year ago.
So this will take care of that.
This will help. This is step one in that process. We will then, once we kind of let the dust settle, the chief and I have been looking at, and I've told him we really need to look at that compression issue, and we'll bring that back. That will be a separate budgetary item for you to look at after the first of the year. This also keeps us in line, and we looked specifically at the MARC data yesterday. And so with the agencies where we are competing in Johnson County, the Lenexus, the Shawnees, the Olathes, the Overland Parks, we are right in the hunt. That's $37,000 to $39,000. So we're not putting ourselves out of whack, again, for attracting candidates. So these would be our recommendations for the 2015 salary schedule. I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Any other questions, anybody?
No, but thank you.
Yeah, really.
Recommendation to take to council?
Yep.
Consent?
Consent's fine.
Number 2, personnel policy guidelines update.
Yeah, very briefly, included in your document the whole manual with track changes, so I'm sorry that was a lot to go through, but I did try to tell you which pages you had to look at, so you didn't have to sort through the whole thing. So let me just hit kind of the highlights. What we do every year, again, we do this at the end of the year. We look at making sure that our manual complies legally with any changes that may have happened from a federal or state level, just an HR practice standpoint. Really, all of the things that we were looking at this year are kind of clarification. So the things that if it's not spelled out in black and white, even though we may be doing it in practice, we put some of these things in writing so we don't get questions. So the first one is one of those, talks about that we would interview candidates who meet the minimum qualifications. Whenever we advertise the job, we publish minimum qualifications. It seems pretty straightforward. We interview people with minimum qualifications, but this really takes any discussion off the table about, well, but can't you just talk to so-and-so even though I don't have the requisite degree or training or experience? So that's really just a clarification. Page 22, we're just restating that if you're on a leave of absence, we say it elsewhere in the personnel manual, but we felt it was important here. If you're on a leave of absence, you're not going to continue to accrue time off benefits or any seniority during this time period. For pages 33 and 34, this is again just for some clarity. We'd actually written in this section of causes for termination. The first one was written that you could be subjected to disciplinary action for conviction of a felony or conviction of driving under the influence or testing positive for alcohol or drugs while operating a city vehicle. That sort of read like the only reason if you were convicted of a felony you had to be driving a city vehicle, which is not the case. So we simply separated those two, and then it caused the renumbering of the rest of that section. 35, we wanted to provide some flexibility for reinstatement. This said in the past that if an employee left and then came back to us within 90 days, that you couldn't be making more than the salary you were making when you left. It was designed to prohibit people from salary hopping. And I think we still want to be very cognizant of that, but if you lose a star performer and they get into a situation that maybe doesn't work out, we want the flexibility to be able to potentially bring them back. Page 46.
Excessive use of
Yep, excessive use of internet.
Excessive.
It seems pretty straightforward, but it's always good to, again, as I was saying to Councilmember Quinn, sometimes it's good to just say, remind people that excessive. He was asking how we measure excessive, and again, that's a little probably subjective, but
A little?
a little.
Depends on if it infringes on getting her job
Yeah,
done.
if you're not getting your job done, if it's impacting customer service, again, it's may, not will. Page 48, this is in the, what we really did is we just eliminated people who were classified as supervisors, and this is people who had responsibilities under reporting requirements in our substance abuse policy. These positions no longer exist. If they come back in the future, we'll add them back into the manual. Page 50.
You need to take the and out on 48 after community development director.
Okay.
Oh, mine has it
Oh.
over there. Oh, mine has it.
No,
on
it
there.
should be,
And the community
and
development
the community
director,
development period.
Right.
Mine says, it has period.
Mine says and neighborhood services, and which is crossed off, but it still has an and
Yeah. Mine has an and.
on my electronic copy.
Okay.
Mine has and.
Okay. We'll make sure. 50, again, we're just kind of painting with a broader brush about when we can do post-accident testing. This is, again, consistent with what we do. But before, just said an injury, so we would test an employee for reasonable suspicion of drugs or alcohol if they had an injury requiring immediate hospitalization. What we really want to be able to do is any outside medical attention. We don't do that very often, but just good practice. And then page 56, just being very specific about not texting and driving, even when the car is at a standstill at a stoplight. Yeah, so remember, the personnel manual does not apply to city council members, so. Anyway, those are the changes. Again, this year, nothing really significant from a policy standpoint, but.
Any questions?
Good job.
Council, take
Yep.
council?
Consent?
Yeah.
Absolutely. We should talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay, on 2014 budget amendment?
Budget amendment, yes. So each year when we adopt the budget in August, we set the maximum expenditure limits for each fund. If we exceed those in the course of a year, we are legally required to do a budget amendment where we hold a public hearing. We need to adjust the maximum expenditure limits in 4 funds for 2014, and I tried to detail those in the packet. It is a significant increase, so if you look at what we approved in August of 2014 or August of 2013, the total expenditures in those funds total $17.9 million. We're now asking to increase that to $29.2 million. Let me tell you why. None of those are unexpected expenses, cost overruns, or anything of that. The first increase is in the Parks and Recreation Sales Tax Bond Fund. We issued bonds to pay for the construction of the outdoor pool. We had to guess about the timing of when contractor pay estimates would come in and whether those would be heavy in 13 or heavy in 14. We guessed heavy in 13, we were wrong. They came in heavy in 14. Project is still within budget. We still anticipate ending with the exact same fund balances that we showed when we put the 2015 budget together. We just need to account for the timing of those payments in that fund. Street Sales Tax Bond Fund, kind of the same way. We're really trying to just give ourselves flexibility if we need to use, as you know, we're cash flowing a $10.5 million street project at the end of this year. And we have a variety of sources that can come into that. So we need to give ourselves as much flexibility to pay those bills when they come due. Anything that we spend over that will be, we have reimbursements that are covering those. So again, no cost increases in that project. It's just a cash flow issue so that we don't get a tick mark on the audit at the end of the year when that happens. Stormwater fund, when we put the budget together for 14, we didn't anticipate refunding the entire 2009A issue. We expected to take, we sort of built the budget around a $6 million reimbursement from the Gateway project, and we were going to apply $6 million to debt service. What we found was we could save, and as that was not going to be available in this year, we could save $1.5 million in interest, so we refinanced the entire issue. So we needed to, that was $15 million that we refunded between those two issues. All of those bond proceeds came in, all of those bond proceeds came out. That's why you see that big increase in that fund. And capital improvement fund, again, is just we weren't sure when we put the budget together in 13 who was upfronting some of the money between KDOT and Overland Park and CARS and us. And so this is, again, no increases in project costs. This is all just capital related to the Johnson Drive project. So we published a public notice in the legal record calling a public hearing for the December 17th council meeting. We would hold that meeting, adjust these limits, or recommend adjusting these limits, and then the council would approve these amendments to the budget.
I would also encourage you to be prepared to discuss what that range exceedance is, that we're not, it's not every, you know, we have reimbursable practices in place and everything. We're not spending this money.
Yep.
I want that explained to my
Okay.
out there.
We'll do that.
Other questions, comments? Okay, so take the council.
Right.
So consent?
No, you're going to have a public
Right.
hearing. Yep.
Oh, okay. Carrot workers' compensation renewal?
Yes, so this is again annual process. We just had our CARET board meeting yesterday and the rates were not changed. So this is, we since 2009 have transitioned to the Kansas Eastern Regional Insurance Trust for work compensation coverage. We have probably saved, when we left KMIT back in 2000, in that 2008-2009 year, we were paying $122,000 a year in work comp premium. So we've had significant, continue to see significant savings in this pool. It's been a great experience for us. Our premiums for 2015 have been set at $83,263, which is about a 1% increase over our 2014 premium. We will actually, our actual cash outlay will be slightly less because the trust does a dividend distribution at the end of each year, and they approved those yesterday as well. So we're going to have about a $4,000 dividend distribution to offset premiums, so that will bring that down for us. We budgeted $97,500 in the 2015 budget, so there's more than enough money there. We'll realize some savings in our work comp premiums. Every budget.
Carrot move was a huge move.
Yeah,
For sure.
sounds like it.
Questions?
Good
Council?
job. Yeah.
Consent?
Sure.
Okay, property casualty general liability renewals.
And we'll pass these around. I didn't get these till late today. We go through, again, kind of a marketing process each year for our property casualty general liability coverage lines. We went to two carriers, One Beacon, who we have been with for the last several years, Travelers, had insured the city for probably 20 plus years before that. And we were seeing a really steady and fairly steep escalation in our premiums there. So we went to market One Beacon. I think has been a good transition for us. CBIZ, who is our insurance broker, goes out and takes us to market for us. They were working on that. The initial renewal quote from One Beacon came in at about 6% increase. Travelers we kicked out fairly early because Travelers doubled and in some cases tripled our deductibles on our coverage lines, and it was going to take one incident to make up the difference. It was about a $10,000 savings in premium, but it would have taken one additional claim for us to get there. I was a little uncomfortable with that. I don't think that's necessarily a good risk management perspective for us to be in. So we went back and actually continued the negotiations with One Beacon, and they have actually come in. So you'll see in this sheet that I handed out, the 2015 One Beacon premium is actually $115,670, which is actually turned out to be about a 4% reduction over our current year premium, maintaining the same deductibles, and that was actually with an increase in our property, the valuations of our properties and some things. So I feel like that's a really, was a really successful marketing effort this year. So we would recommending renewing our coverage lines with one beacon for a total annual premium of $115,670. This can fluctuate during the year, but it fluctuates only for the addition of property. So if we add or subtract vehicles or real estate property, that premium can fluctuate. But this is based on what we own today, what that premium would be. And we budgeted $128,050, which includes this line plus a $1,500 surety bond and coverage for the treasurer, the city's treasurer. And then we use the balance typically to pay any deductibles or other small claims we might have throughout the course of the year. So we're in the 2015 budget.
Awesome. Questions?
Excellent.
Council?
Sure. Yeah,
Consent.
how often do we look at like CBIZ?
We will be due to look at CBIZ next year.
And all our brokers, it's on a 3-year rotation?
Yeah, we've stretched some of them longer than that.
Sure.
We've been working on really for about the last 6 months a calendar and trying to get back on that cycle, 3 to 4 year cycles typically. We stretch, for example, benefit brokers, we've stretched longer with affordable care, but it will be time to look at that one as well.
Yep.
All right, so now we're on the 2015 alcohol and tax fund recommendations.
So the city receives alcohol tax funds distributed by the state. By statute, we have to split those, a third to general fund operations, a third to special alcohol fund, a third to special parks and recreation fund. We're estimating, the state's estimates, when we put the budget together, about $128,400 in total. Each year, then we have typically given the majority of those alcohol tax funds to United Community Services, and they distribute those. They have an application program, and they fund these agencies to deliver those services. So we have to commit early in the budget process to what we're going to send them, and we committed to about $35,000. We're keeping about $15,000 of those funds in-house, and we use that to offset DARE expenditures and the time that we use for our officer who provides that DARE program. And so just like we did last month with Human Service Fund, once the UCS committee gets through their process, they like each entity to specifically approve. So in your packet were the recommendations for funding for 2015.
Any questions?
I have a question. Have we ever had any requests from the alternative school?
Horizons? I think the Shawnee Mission School District.
Includes them?
Yeah, I think the school districts get money and they allocated that among their various buildings and programs.
Okay, any other questions? Council?
Sure.
Consent?
Please.
Absolutely.
Guess what?
Ooh,
We go
somebody
great.
other than me.
Yay. Ordinance amending 2014 standard traffic ordinance.
This is gonna take 60 seconds. So,
You can't get down here.
and hey, the whole policy thing on the internet, Laura and I have talked, and when we do the prostitution ops, it has absolutely nothing to do with it. Absolutely nothing. So, a couple months ago, you guys approved the STO standard traffic ordinance book, and the state had to put a couple of misprints in there, put a few things where they shouldn't have, and had to define a few things. So real simple, the word act, they had to define what the word act was, and underneath liability insurance, they put subsections 1 and 2 underneath C, and it should have been underneath B. It's as simple as that. So,
Any questions for the chief?
So we want to.
I was gonna point that out to you.
I know
Have you
you
been
were.
reading it since July?
Yeah. So all the cities are passing this.
Consent.
So it's our turn.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
I know we got 8:30. We're on.
Awesome,
we're on
yeah.
clock.
No, we're on
I
8:28.
think you got in at 42 seconds there.
Excellent.
The pressure is on.
Okay, 2015 CMB renewals, Martha.
These are the usuals. We don't have any new ones that renew annually for their cereal malt beverage. And actually, Valero sold to someone else, so they are not selling beer right now. They'll probably come back later in the year if they decide to get a CMB license.
Yeah, we don't get that much from you. Okay, council agenda.
Okay.
Consent.
All right. Anybody have a
Martha had to beat me.
She did.
She did, she beat me.
Way to go, Martha, all right, okay. 2015 budget ordinance, Laura, you're back up. Hopefully we've had a sufficient,
I can take a breath, yes. So this is one of two steps, ordinances that we adopt, or an ordinance and a resolution. There are two ordinances at the end of each year. We hold this till the end of the year, just in the event that we need to come back and make any revisions to the 2015 budget. We do not, so it would move forward as approved in August. But this just formally adopts our budget.
Agenda? No.
consent.
That's it.
Please.
All right, ordinance directing the city administrator to
This
spend,
is the way Mitch runs the meeting.
ordinance directing city administrator to, we haven't had like really exciting things to talk about in the finance administration committee.
I'm sorry.
We'll do better next month.
That's a good thing, that's a good
You're saying
thing.
this one is exciting?
That'll change.
I mean, it's just like, I'm like looking through it, I'm like, there's.
We just got rid of that sign one first.
It's routine.
We don't already have an ordinance directing you to do that?
No, you do it every year,
Every
or else
year.
you have to
It has
come
to
back
be
and
annual
approve
things.
every expenditure and every check that we write, so we do this every year.
Okay.
Approved, you got approved.
Yeah.
Any
Consent.
questions? Did you give us that? Are we good? We're good.
Okay.
I don't know. Are we good with that?
We're good.
Okay. Oh, here's the big one. This is gonna
Yes.
take a long time. Surplus equipment.
We're good.
I recommend consent.
Your voice sounds a little dusty. I mean, seriously.
Dusty or?
Dusty.
Oh.
I said dusty.
It says dusty with a
Oh.
D.
Oh.
Dusty, I'm dusty.
Glass of wine.
Okay. Any other items Susie wants to talk about? Yes, Susie?
I'm just asking you all to remember, we have a tree at the community center. There is lots of tags on, guys.
And you've
Lots
got
of
wrapping
tags.
on Sunday.
We are wrapping the
Split my
21st.
gifts between
Oh,
two or
the
three
21st.
people.
But if everybody would please go pick up some tags, or if you don't want to go pick up tags, if you'll give me the money, I will be happy to shop for you. Where's your $100 bill?
I gave it to you
We said it
already.
after Thanksgiving. This is Christmas.
I'm going to pick up a few tags, but my question is, if I get the items and then bring them for the wrapping Sunday, can I also bring my gift for Mary and have you guys wrap that?
Sure.
for me?
We charge for that.
We have to make Mary's gift doesn't go to.
That is
That's a great
horrible.
We
idea.
have been paid.
That is
We have to
horrible.
wrap.
We could do wrapping.
You can
Mary's
grab,
gift
it's
doesn't go
just
to the family.
old tape, done.
I wrap
Okay.
for money. I wrap
Just
for
remember,
money.
we have a lot of families, and we're getting things like they want basketball socks, they want erasers, they want things that are really
Important.
I have the other dishes, other pieces to the dishes that I put, sorry, I gave you a whole bunch of stuff last time. Martha's like, this is clothing.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
no.
dishes and things that
I
were.
have more
for the
dishes,
upload, yeah.
I have a dresser that's not in super uber great shape, but it's usable, it's got one drawer that kind of comes off the rail, but.
It's okay, we'll take anything.
I have an old computer desk too, if somebody wants that.
Okay, we're gonna go through the tags this weekend,
Yeah.
or I'm gonna go through them.
Well, just know, I have those,
That'd be
so
great.
whenever.
It's
that's-
okay if I wrap my family's gifts
Oh, yeah,
myself, right?
yeah.
I'm gonna wrap them at home.
Yeah.
Just remember, we have a lot of them, so
Can I
I
bring
hope.
Mary's gift over
Oh,
here?
absolutely.
She doesn't charge, I do.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Chief, what are
You gotta
these?
do
These
that
are
as a
super
fundraiser.
cool.
And staff, I'm talking to all of you too, I hope you all have tags. Okay.
I love these. I'll put this in frame.
So those are the warrior chips that we just
Is
came
this
up
a
with.
challenge coin type thing? What's a warrior chip
It's-
versus?
Same,
similar.
challenge going only.
Don't break the law.
Yeah, so we pass those out to kids or people that we bump into. One of the officers bumped into somebody at Panera today and passed it out and struck up a conversation.
Sweet.
Those cost just over $1 a piece.
Oh, I
the,
didn't see this on the back.
yeah.
That's cool.
The metal ones are getting made, and I'll get you guys all metal ones that I think you'll really like. Those are ones that are a little
We
bit
got
more
metal ones
expensive.
once already, but that's before we changed the
Right.
Logo.
So,
shield.
yeah, I think you guys will really like the officers came together and
I didn't get a medal.
Okay, so everybody ready to come tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night.
Party on.
Tomorrow
County
night?
Commission Appreciation Banquet.
Party
Miss
on.
UW.
I won't be there.
Oh, you
What?
won't be there tomorrow night?
My friend passed away, her funeral was at 10 on Friday.
Sorry.
We've got to drive tomorrow.
Yeah, sorry to hear
Be
that.
safe, you be safe.
I will not be there either. Kathleen is singing in the Christmas pageant.
We don't get a second chance at that.
No, Right, Debbie, I couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Well, listen, show choir.
And we have shirts, if you ordered a mission shirt, Martha has shirts, anything else, anybody?
Is anybody gonna individually respond to this person that wants Roeland Park to merge with Mission?
I'm happy to draft a response if you feel like it warrants a response.
Roeland Park to merge with
Did you see that?
I didn't see it, no.
You want mine?
No.
It's in your box.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure you just have.
Amy, why don't you email me what you want?
Yep.
Thank you all.
Yep, that way you'll just
Thank
have it.
you so much.
Yep. Thank you guys, have a Merry Christmas if I don't see you before tomorrow.
We've got city council next Wednesday.
Oh, sorry.